Love, as I once knew it, was pure, unfiltered, and so intoxicating it made me defy the expectations of my pedigree. I, Magdalene Asher, the only daughter of English philanthropist Lord Charles Asher, walked the stone-paved paths of Oxford with a heart brimming with rebellion and affection. I had fallen deeply, irrevocably, in love with James Solomon, an ambitious, soft-spoken, fatherless boy with ink-stained hands and dreams far bigger than his humble beginnings. Hey everyone! You're welcome back to my channel. If you like our story, a similar daily stories, please do where to subscribe to our channel for more stories like this. And if you're a returning subscriber, thanks for stopping by, and don't forget to use our notification button so as to get notifications anytime we post our stories. Thank you. So now let's dive into the gist. We met during our second year in the English department. I still remember the first time I saw him. He was sitting alone beneath the Bodleian oak, reading Paradise Lost with such quiet intensity. I was drawn to him like paper to fire. James was brilliant but always 2 weeks behind on tuition and never quite dressed for the weather. His jumpers were frayed, his shoes worn thin, but his mind was majestic. It didn't take long before study sessions turned into midnight strolls and essays swapped for love letters written on the backs of lecture notes. My parents disapproved, of course. A man like James offered no financial advantage, no esteemed family name to continue our lineage. But I loved him, fully and without apology. And so, I paid his tuition quietly, under the guise of scholarship assistance. I bought his books, fed him when his fridge stood empty, and smiled through their judgment. What they didn't understand was that James filled my soul in ways wealth never could. He was my equal, not in fortune but in spirit. We graduated together, hand in hand, ready to conquer the world and build a home where love, not legacy, was the foundation. Marriage came soon after, a modest ceremony at a countryside chapel in Oxfordshire. We were young, wildly in love, and oblivious to what the world could become when life began to demand more than just affection. I bore 3 beautiful children: Ava, the fierce firstborn, Thomas, the quiet artist, and Lily, my little firefly. We moved to Cambridge, then to London, where James was offered a senior lecturing position, and I became a children's author, my books inspired by the laughter that echoed through our home. But the one change that would alter the trajectory of our lives came not in the form of a job or child, but a visitor. James's mother, Eloise Solomon, moved in with us when James's department workload became overwhelming, and we agreed we needed help with the children. I welcomed her with open arms at first. After all, she had raised James alone after his father died in a car accident when he was just a boy. I respected her, admired her resilience, but admiration quickly turned to unease. Their bond was different. At first, I dismissed it as maternal closeness. After all, she had no other children and he no siblings. But the way he looked at her, lingered around her presence, touched her hand longer than necessary, it began to unsettle me. They cooked together late at night, watched old films on the couch with her head on his shoulder. I would often find her in our bedroom, folding his shirts, placing her hands over his suits as though memorizing the shape of his body. Still I said nothing, because I trusted James, because silence felt easier than sounding irrational, because I didn't want to be the jealous wife who questioned the relationship between a son and his mother. But silence has a way of feeding monsters. That summer, I had to attend a week-long authors conference in California. The flight was scheduled for noon. I kissed my babies goodbye, hugged James tight, and whispered how much I loved him. He smiled the way he always did when I said those words and told me to take care. But fate has a sense of cruel timing. My flight was delayed, then canceled due to a storm hovering over the Atlantic. I decided to take a cab home instead of booking a hotel. The kids were staying with my sister for the week, and I figured I could at least spend the night in my own bed before arranging new travel plans. It was past midnight when I got home. The lights were off. I wheeled my small suitcase up the stairs, careful not to wake anyone, until I heard it. Soft voices. A giggle. Our bedroom door slightly ajar. And then I saw them. James and Eloise. On our matrimonial bed. His hand on her bare thigh. Her fingers tracing his chest like an old lover reacquainted with forbidden pleasure. My throat closed. My knees buckled. My heart shattered into shards I couldn't begin to piece together. I didn't scream. I didn't speak. I just stood there frozen, watching the unimaginable become real. There are moments in a woman's life when time slows, when the world as she knows it, breaks apart with such silent violence that it feels like watching a mirror fall in slow motion. That night, standing in the hallway of my own home, I lived one of those moments. James didn't notice me right away. His face was turned toward her, their foreheads nearly touching. Eloise laughed, soft, intimate. Then her hand slid up his chest. That was when he saw me. His body tensed, eyes widening like a child caught in mischief. But this wasn't mischief. It was betrayal, ancient and cruel. Magdalene, he gasped, scrambling to cover himself with the bedsheet. Eloise shrieked, clutching the blanket to her chest, eyes wide in horror. Magdalene, this isn't what it looks like. Isn't what it looks like? The insult of the cliché made me want to laugh or scream. I couldn't tell which. My mouth moved, but no words came out. Instead, I took a shaky step backward, then another, my suitcase still clutched in one hand like an anchor tethering me to this nightmare. James lunged from the bed, still partially undressed. Please let me explain. It was a mistake, a moment. A moment. My voice was hoarse, distant. A moment on our bed? In our home? With your mother? I hadn't meant to say it aloud. The word mother tasted like ash. Eloise was trembling now, her hands shielding her face. I stared at her, not with anger at first, but confusion. Disbelief. This was the woman who baked my children birthday cakes, who crocheted little mittens for Lily in winter, who held my hand when I gave birth to Ava. You were like a mother to me, I whispered. My knees gave out, and I sat on the floor dazed. James knelt in front of me, reaching for my hand. I pulled away. His face was flushed, his voice cracking as he pleaded. Magda, I didn't plan this. It happened over time. I didn't know how to stop it. How long? I asked suddenly still. What? How long has this been going on? He hesitated. Just that moment of silence, that slight pause was enough. Gu, hybrid. You loved her. You've been loving her. No, he said quickly, shaking his head. I love you. I've always loved you. I stared at him. Then why wasn't I enough? There was no answer. I stood slowly, knees trembling. I walked to the children's rooms and stared at their empty beds, their clothes, their drawings taped to the walls. I felt like I was looking at a home that no longer belonged to me. By morning, I had packed every bag I could carry. I called a moving service to send for the rest. I wrote a note for the children to find later, explaining we were going to stay with Aunt Helena for a while. And then I left. I didn't look back, not once. We moved to Brighton. A small cottage by the sea that I had bought years ago as a vacation retreat now became our refuge. The children didn't ask many questions at first. Ava, wise beyond her years, sensed something was broken. Thomas clung to me constantly, drawing pictures of our old house. Lily kept asking when Daddy would visit. I told her gently, not for a while. I woke up every night with my pillow wet from tears. Not because of James and Eloise's betrayal, but because I had built a life on love, trust, and the belief that some things were sacred. I had believed in James so deeply that I ignored the warnings my soul had whispered for months. The late-night conversations, the way he always took her side in disagreements, the secretive glances they exchanged when they thought I wasn't looking. I blamed myself at first. Maybe I had worked too much. Maybe I had loved him so much I became blind. Maybe I had trusted the wrong man. But slowly, as the days passed, I began to shift the blame where it belonged. He was the one who crossed the line. She was the one who welcomed it. And I was the one who survived it. 3 weeks later he called. I ignored it. Then he wrote letters, 5 of them. I read the first one, then burned the rest. I didn't need to hear excuses. I didn't need to understand why. Some sins are not meant to be forgiven. I never thought I'd be the woman who left in the night. The woman who took the children and vanished into salt air and unfamiliar linens. But Brighton, with its roaring sea and gray skies, became a kind of healing womb. The waves didn't ask questions. The wind didn't whisper names I no longer wanted to hear. And for the first time in a long time, I breathed without feeling like I owed anyone an explanation. James continued to call. I blocked his number. Then came the emails. Then a letter, mailed to the school where I had quietly enrolled the children. I read it once, then folded it and placed it in the drawer with the rest. There were apologies, confessions, even quotes from the poets we used to adore. Forgive me, he wrote. It wasn't love. It was confusion. I was tired. I needed comfort. Comfort. I wanted to scream. He had wrapped himself in something incestuous, shameful, and now tried to name it as comfort? No court order was filed. No lawyer reached out. He didn't fight me for custody. Maybe he knew he'd already lost everything. Or maybe he simply couldn't face me again. Eloise, as far as I knew, had disappeared. Ava once asked, "Mummy, where's Grandma?" And I had to excuse myself to the bathroom to keep from screaming. When I returned, I smiled and said, "She won't be visiting anymore." My days became mechanical but full. The children and I created new rituals. Sunday morning walks by the pier, hot cocoa by the fireplace, watercolor painting in the afternoons. I read them stories from books I used to write only for publishing houses, and for the first time I wrote just for them. I was a mother without a husband, a writer without an audience, and a woman building her bones again. Yet every so often I found myself wondering how I missed it. How did I not see the cracks in James? Was it denial? Arrogance? Or the foolish belief that love could excuse anything? Late at night, after the children had fallen asleep, I would sit on the balcony wrapped in my wool shawl, a cup of tea growing cold in my hand, and replay that moment again and again. The gasp, the shame, the silence. And each time I saw it again, the pain grew less sharp. Not softer but easier to carry. Months passed. The sea changed color. Ava turned 10, and for her birthday we baked a cake shaped like a book and invited 2 classmates over. She didn't ask about her father once. Lily called him by name now. James instead of Daddy. I never told her to stop. Thomas, sweet Thomas, drew a picture one day that made my heart ache. It was our cottage, just the 4 of us, and in the corner a black figure with no face. "Who's that?" I asked gently. He shrugged. "No one. Just someone who used to live in our house." That night I cried harder than I had in weeks. Then one crisp morning in April a knock came at the door. I opened it to find James standing there. Thinner. Paler. His eyes sunken, cheeks hollow. He looked like a ghost. A man who had been walking through life with no direction. I didn't invite him in. "I just needed to see you," he said. "To see that you're okay." "I am," I answered. "The children are too. We don't need anything from you." He nodded, then looked down at his shoes. "Eloise is gone," he muttered. I said nothing. He continued. "She left for New Zealand. She said she couldn't live with what we'd done. That she would never speak to me again. I haven't heard from her in months. I let that settle between us." No sympathy rose inside me. Only the weight of finality. "I miss them," he said, eyes lifting to mine. "The children. You should have thought of that before you tore our family apart." "Magdalene," he whispered, stepping closer. "I don't expect forgiveness. I don't know who I am without you." That broke something in me, but not in the way he might have hoped. I realized in that moment how dependent he had always been. How I had carried him, built him, believed in him until he could stand on his own. And when he finally could, he used that freedom to break me. "I know who I am now," I said. "And it's not your wife." I closed the door. I thought seeing James again would ruin me all over. That my knees would buckle the way they did that night. That my voice would falter. That I would question everything. But when I closed the door in his face, I felt nothing but the steady beat of my own heart. I had not screamed. I had not begged. I had not broken. Instead, I had chosen myself. That was the final goodbye. He never returned. And if he did try again, he did so quietly in ways I never noticed, perhaps in dreams or prayers, or in those blank spaces in old photos where my smile used to meet his. But I stopped waiting for him to understand. Some truths are too sacred to explain. Spring melted into summer in Brighton, and for the first time in years I felt beautiful again. Not for a man, not for a mirror, but for me. I ran barefoot on the beach with the children, let Ava braid my hair with seashells, taught Thomas to ride his bike, and helped Lily write her first poem, which she proudly titled, "Mummy is a Queen." The cottage bloomed with laughter and purpose. I filled the garden with wildflowers. I painted the kitchen yellow. I even finished a new children's book. One that publishers called Hauntingly Honest. Inspired by love, betrayal, and healing. I wrote under my maiden name again. Magdalene Asher. The world had not ended. It had merely turned. One day, while organizing old boxes in the attic, I found the wedding photo, James and I, standing on the steps of the Oxfordshire chapel, our smiles wide, our eyes naive. I stared at it for a long time, remembering the girl I used to be. She had believed that love was enough. That if you held someone hard enough, you could keep them from falling. But people fall anyway. Sometimes into you. Sometimes away from you. Sometimes into darkness you cannot follow. I didn't tear the photo. I didn't burn it. Instead, I tucked it away in a memory box, with the children's baby teeth and locks of hair and hospital bracelets. James had once been part of something precious, even if he didn't know how to protect it. Forgiveness didn't come with trumpets or tears. It came like the tide, slow, reluctant, and then finally inevitable. I forgave, not for him, not because he deserved it, but for me. Because I was tired of carrying his shame like a second skin. 2 years passed. The children thrived. Ava began journaling, just like I used to. Thomas was accepted into a gifted art program. Lily learned to swim in the sea, fearless and wild. And I started speaking at women's conferences. Not just as an author, but as a woman who had endured, who had walked through fire with 3 children clinging to her skirt, and come out not unscathed, but alive. My story wasn't rare, I learned. I met women who had been cheated on, lied to, abandoned. Women whose husbands had left them for secretaries, best friends, even their own sisters. But rarely, heartbreakingly, their mothers. I didn't share that detail often. Some wounds still felt too raw for the stage. Some parts of my life remained mine alone. But in every woman's face, I saw a reflection of the Magdalene I had once been, broken, confused, ashamed. And in every hug, every tearful thank you, I saw proof that healing was not only possible, it was contagious. One rainy afternoon, I received a letter. Not from James, but from his sister. I hadn't spoken to her in years. She wrote to say Eloise had died in New Zealand. Liver failure. Alone. I sat with the letter for a long time. The children were outside playing in the puddles. The house smelled of rain and rosemary. I didn't cry. I didn't rejoice. I just felt still. Some tragedies, I realized, leave no room for vengeance. Only silence. I often wonder what James tells himself now. What story he's chosen to live with. I don't need to know. The truth lives with me, and I've made peace with it. I am Magdalene Asher, daughter of strength, mother of 3, author of my own becoming. And that summer night, though it broke me, also gave birth to the woman I am today. Not a victim, not a fool, but a phoenix born not from fire but from clarity. Have you heard or experienced similar stories? Please tell us how you handled it in the comment section, and don't forget to on your notifications button, so as to get notifications anytime we post our stories. Bye and see you in my next video.